Okay, this time it's just me. Yasmin has literally fallen asleep and not responding to my calls. So it seems that you're stuck with me. What can you do? Anyway, today we're going to be talking about the managing of the digital well-being in a 24/7 world, a topic that I'm sure we're going to revisit in the future as well, because in our experience, a lot of things related to the digital well-being of all of us have only gotten worse over the course of the past few years with the proliferation of various technologies, social networks, mobile games, and capability to consume various types of content on our mobile devices, on our computers, and whatnot. But with that being said, yeah, this is the new episode of ThatITShow podcast. My name is Vedran, and let's roll the intro and then let's have a discussion about this topic. Okay, so generally speaking, what got me to discuss this particular topic is something that I've became like acutely aware of the course of the past few years, especially in the post-COVID era, and it's always around us, and we can, if we are perceptive enough, we can always see young and old people and everything in between, children and adults working with, fiddling with their mobile devices all the time instead of talking and whatnot. Basically, what's happened is that as technology has become an integral part of our daily lives, bringing convenience and connectivity and innovation, that also has some side effects, like the constant influx of notifications, emails, social media updates, digital distractions in general, which results in many people finding themselves really overwhelmed by the technology. And this is something that's often referred to as tech overwhelm or digital fatigue. Uh, Normally, a topic that probably would suit very well to a lot of you guys and girls and old and young listening to this episode of the podcast, because this is something that's grown so much under our skin that we don't necessarily even notice that we are doing it, and hence the problem as well. So as we are constantly basically navigating an increasingly digital world, what ends up happening as well is something that is a very nasty side effect of that fact, which is we are trying to find ways to balance technology and kind of like use and maintain sense of control over our digital lives, which has directly influenced our regular everyday lives, and we need to distinguish between the two, because it's sometimes not as easy to distinguish between them, and sometimes we all of us kind of like cross the line between what the life is versus what the digital life is, and those two things are not the same, and they should never ever be treated as the same. So first, let's talk about the factors that are contributing to this technological overwhelm. Basically, as technology is so integrated with our lives, managing the well-being is crucial for mental and physical health. And there are many causes of this tech overwhelm that we can kind of identify and discuss. First is the perpetual connectivity and information saturation. Basically, this is a primary contributor to our digital overwhelm. And the fact of the matter is that with the invention of internet, with popularization of mobile devices and whatnot and applications, we get constant, incessant influx of information, and people are constantly inundated with information via emails, messages, news updates, social media, whatever, which means that the extensive amount of knowledge, although it can be, of course, challenging to assimilate, but it also results in tension and cognitive overload. And this might also have a very negative influence on the concentration level in the long term sense. Then the compulsion or the pressure to constantly stay online, connected and accessible. And this actually is something that you get more and more aware of as years go by, as you become a little bit older. Although you can become very much aware of it if you're younger as well. So a lot of people experience pressure to constantly remain accessible to everybody for whatever personal or professional engagements. Remote work and flexible schedules have basically blurred the lines between professional and personal life as well, as a result of what happened in the past 5 years since C19, which oftentimes means it's very difficult to disconnect. And furthermore, one of the most common things that I hear in the past 3 or 4 years, especially among the young folk, is that fear of missing out, or FOMO, as we usually refer to as, intensifies this problem, basically driving users to often check their devices. I'm also basically a practitioner of this, not for FOMO reasons, it's just a matter of habit. I constantly check some things on my mobile phone. Mostly it's emails, less so messages and social networks. It's mostly emails, and especially emails related to some parts of the work, scientific publications, and reviewership that I have to do in books and authorship and whatnot, stuff like that. But mostly it's work related. For somebody else, it might be just a constant requirement or need to be present on the social networks or whatever. Then a side effect of that is multitasking and diminished concentration or focus. I mean, technology kind of forces you into that direction, into multitasking, but the research indicates that engaging in multiple digital tasks simultaneously might also have a negative impact on productivity and also elevate stress levels. So the continual transition between the tasks is going to lead to basically shallow or superficial concentration, hindering the ability to focus on any kind of significant activity. Then it gets chemical. Actually, the dopamine cycle, compulsive design, addictive design, and stuff like that of the social media platforms and their algorithms and applications which contribute to it. All of those things are basically engineered to maximize and maintain user engagement by stimulating dopamine release in the brain, one of the chemicals that has something to do with pleasure. The unlimited scroll capability, notifications, curated material by the algorithms and whatnot will establish a cycle of various types of addictive engagements, rendering disconnection difficult. And also it's about the discipline or lack of or absence of digital boundaries. So if we don't have some kind of boundary, in this case a digital boundary that's explicitly set, establishment of good habits, digital habits, becomes quite a bit more challenging. And a lot of people engage in checking emails at late at night, browsing social media during family time, replying to business communication, weekends and whatnot. And actually, in past couple of years, we've seen some movement in terms of getting to a point where business communication on weekends, in terms of receiving emails, is denied by law. There are multiple countries all over the world that kind of codified that into legislation. So there are, let's say, positive movements in terms of getting that at least under control, at least a bit. So those are the causes. What are the effects? The usual cause and effect analysis. Of course, it's going to be more of a mental and emotional stress in various different ways. Excessive technology utilization has for a long time already been associated with heightened anxiety, stress, expectations, even depression, and many of these very, very difficult, even psychological, side effects. And continuous exposure to news, social comparisons, online discourse, fights, comments, challenges like that are something that can really result in all sorts of emotional fatigue problems. That also leads to reduced productivity and cognitive burden or overload. Although technology is something that seeks to enhance our productivity, these digital distractions may yield completely opposite results. Typically, for example, in a corporate environment, an employee allocates considerable time to do email engagement, do responses on the messages on Teams and various other collaboration platforms, receives a boatload of additional notifications on other applications, distracting and diminishing the capacity to focus on any kind of serious work and creativity. And oftentimes people try to fight that in various innovative yet not necessarily healthy ways. For example, staying at work late at night when nobody's around, or coming to work very early in the morning, again when nobody's there, so that you can get some stuff done, so that you can do the stuff that are really that require intense concentration and a little bit longer period of that intense concentration, because people are also a detracting factor in these respects, and they might also lead to various other types of distractions, be it the sound or vision wise. You can just see them in your peripheral vision, which will already diminish your concentration. That can lead to various types of health concerns as well. And there's research that shows that extended screen exposure leads to eye fatigue, suboptimal posture, problems with the neck, for example, and spine, sleep deprivation and disruptions and whatnot. And also, a few years ago, there was some research done in terms of trying to figure out what effect the exposure to blue light from display can have on body's normal circadian rhythm of sleeping and being awake and whatnot, which complicates the ability to initiate and maintain sleep, which is required for recuperation. A lot has been said about this, but online, let's say, constant online communication and distractions and compulsory, let's say, ways that we use to constantly communicate with everybody online can also put a strain on our social standing and our relationships that can become strained due to digital distractions. I mean, oftentimes a lot of us just sit and drink coffee with somebody and constantly check our phones instead of actually focusing on the person next to us who is trying to talk to us or communicate with us, or maybe exchanging an opinion or sharing some kind of a disruptive or bad situation with us, which leads to various negative emotions as well that might become long term if this is algorithmically kind of replayed many times over. And people who are aware of these things on the other side of that conversation become not only aware, but they become incessantly aware of the fact that they're basically being ignored, and they start wondering what's going on, and they're going to, at the end of the day, start avoiding you, because you are not, by constantly checking on the phone, you're not necessarily treating them with respect and or being their quality, let's say, conversation partner, which is very important. And we've long since lost the capability to lead normal conversations, unless it's via a keyboard or some kind of a social network or something like that, which is something that definitely needs to change. And excessive choices. Online communication gives us so many options, 100,000 smileys and Giphy images and whatnot. We can constantly try to have a little bit of fun with that, but you constantly have to make a lot of the choices, and you're constantly paying attention to that and paying attention not to, offend somebody, to answer quickly, to have as less latency as possible, to be interesting, to be funny and whatnot. This is all mentally distracting and burdening on us as well. So even if we talk about these simple things like messages and let's say emoticons and whatnot, emails and responses to content can be even worse, especially if you are prone to constantly checking what's happening underneath an article you wrote in the comments section, or if you posted something on social media and check the responses and whatnot. So those are the effects. What are the approaches that we can use to manage our digital well-being? This is a very, very interesting topic. I mean, one of the first things that I oftentimes say to our students on the classes that Yasmin and I teach is that for the most part, a lot of people lack the basic discipline. So the discipline to decide to do something and then to actually continue doing that something until it becomes a regular habit or something that you do just without thinking. One of those things could be, for example, establishing digital boundaries. For example, separation between digital and physical existence. Leave the phone alone at home when you're going out. Maybe to establish a no-tech zone when you're at home or with somebody. For example, leave the phone on the dining table. Don't carry it to a bedroom because it's not an ideal way to get some fun before you get to sleep. Actually, it increases your mental awareness and your mental engagement and just perpetuates what we were discussing. And also, what oftentimes parents do to their children, we establish the time constraints on using the mobile devices, whatever the applications and whatever the types of communications those mobile devices might do. So screen time and similar settings on mobile phones might be really helpful in terms of setting some boundaries for the amount of time that we spend, scrolling incessantly on Instagram or whatever it is that our application is. And I found that one of the first steps that helps me a lot is to try to, on one side of the fence, try to focus really hard on some kind of a very critical task at hand, whatever it may be. And then on a side, to disable all non essential notifications to minimize distractions. So if I have a smartwatch, I just put it in silent mode, put mobile phone in silent mode, disable notifications from the mobile phone or from mobile phone being redirected to your smartwatch or whatever the combination that may be. I usually shut down my web browser in which I read email in Office 365 because that also has both visual and sound based notifications. And having in mind that I work in an office with 5 to 6 people, at times there are a couple of my colleagues who really leave that very loud as notifications. And when they start coming for multiple people, both on mobile phone and on, for example, Office 365 at the same time, you get this cacophony of sounds and you start, you quickly go crazy and start yelling at people around you because that is just way too loud and not really something that you want to have in a working environment. In terms of mindful technology use, so conscious technology use is something that we should kind of like educate ourselves to do. So mindfulness will enable us as human beings to interact with technology in which with much more purpose because the technology doesn't have to be the purpose. So engaging in these sorts of tasks that kind of like emphasize mindfulness might be something like screen time, minimizing completely unnecessary usage of the mobile devices, using technology with defined objective rather than out of routine, which we oftentimes do. And for me, engaging in deep work by establishing intervals of continuous concentration and just leaving the mobile phones on phone or a tablet or something on the side is something that helps me a lot to get stuff done, especially as oftentimes I have to do a lot of documentation and administration for a variety of different types of work that I do. So this really helps me to get stuff done. Then digital well-being tools, instruments, applications, whatever to monitor screen time. We have usually multiple gadgets all around us and applications, but they also might have integrated functionalities to assist with regulating our screen time. Just as an example, Apple Screen Time and Google's digital well-being on Android phones enable users to monitor consumption and establish restrictions. Personally, I started using digital well-being on my Android phone quite a while ago, and one of the things that I do on a weekly basis is when the digital well-being report gets created over the weekend, I usually read it and then I compare to the previous weekend. I write the numbers down to see how many minutes or hours or whatever I've spent doing XYZ on mobile phone. Sometimes I even look to per application consumption and check which applications I use the most and try to then force myself next week to use them less. You can also use some other built-in utilities like focus mode or do not disturb features on applications or on mobile phones to reduce distractions. And then there are additional third-party applications like Freedom, Rescue Time, and whatnot that can really help in mitigating distractions, basically to completely shut off all of the distractions coming from mobile and gadgets and tablets and whatnot, so that you can focus on doing something productive. Something productive doesn't necessarily have to be work. It can also be reading a book, enjoying the silence, watching sunset, taking a walk, whatever it may be. Then, in terms of establishing additional discipline, establishing digital detox as a routine is something that seems like a good idea as well. So, digital detox would mean deliberately abstaining from using technology to kind of like relax a little bit in your head and then to contemplate a weekend or a vacation without the use of technology, which I'm yet to try, but I'm kind of hoping that this year is going to be the turning point for that so that I can see how much benefit that can bring to my digital detox. You can also designate certain screen-free periods each day. So idea is, for example, if you have a lunch break or you go for a coffee break with your buddies or your colleagues, or perhaps prior to bedtime, you kind of designate screen-free time periods at those time periods and say, yeah, I'm not going to use the mobile technology during that time, and let's start working with that. Also, I don't know about you, but for me, it really helps to kind of plan offline work, offline stuff that I have to do, like reading, exercising, socializing. I play music with my band. That's very helpful for my digital well-being because for 3 hours each week, I don't even check my mobile phone. I check it when we have a break for 15 minutes. I check once if there are any messages which are urgent ones, and only private ones that are urgent are considered to be actually urgent. Everything else can wait till later because it's not like world is going to crumble because I was unavailable for a couple of hours. And becoming aware of that fact also helps for personal development. Work-life tech balance, so enhance work-life technology equilibrium, is something that is basically your ultimate goal in terms of managing digital well-being. So if you want to try to mitigate the stress and all of the negativity linked to constant online presence and fatigue and whatnot, there are multiple things that you can try to do. For example, you establish certain goals like expectations for private or work-related tasks to do or communication beyond office hours. So you stop communicating outside of the working hours with people and leave the mobile platforms alone, stuff like that. And then to promote asynchronous communication whenever feasible. And this is a key point actually that I'm aware of for myself that I need to work heavily on because I'm usually very synchronous. As soon as I get the message, I have this compulsion to answer as soon as possible. The better way to handle those things would be email because email is going to arrive in your inbox. Then it's going to be there for a while. You can choose to respond to that email later or tomorrow. Stuff like that can be done to significantly impact the way in which you communicate with people while still maintaining, let's say, a good working relationship, but still increasing your work-life tech balance to work for you, not against you. There are other things that we could do. For example, we could curate digital consumption, we could enhance sleep hygiene, cultivate authentic connections, participate in physical activities, formulate a customized digital well-being strategy as well. So all of these things that might optimize our screen time might also be very handy and might work really well for us. So digital consumption curation to reduce overload, stuff like try to focus on important content, not incessant scrolling, not short videos of TikTok and whatnot, because they actually increase our cognitive overload by a lot. And recommendations are, for example, opting out of unnecessary emails and newsletters. This will solve two problems. You will kind of like immediately solve the problem of compulsive responding to those emails and newsletters. And also, it is going to help you with the constant deletion of that, either from inbox and then afterwards from deleted emails and whatnot. So you're going to make a couple of things in one go, a couple of decisions that might have multiple positive influences on your digital well-being. Then you can also decide to engage exclusively with significant and motivational profiles on online or social media or whatever. Shrink down the list of stuff that you follow, especially for those things that are prone to showing too many commercials and or product placements and whatever. So for example, if you want to follow along interesting topics on YouTube, stuff like ThatITShow channel, or I don't know, the what was it called, a Discovery channel, or maybe some kind of a nature based channel, stuff like that, might keep your engagement for longer in one interesting topic instead of slicing it into a million small topics like you would do on TikTok. Like National Geographic is really good in that respect because it offers prolonged content in, let's say, documentary movie style. Then you could also establish temporal constraints for consumption of whatever news to prevent doom scrolling. I don't read news like ever, almost never. Even have the compulsion to read any news because they're usually so negative and they have such negative impact on your life if you read them too much that it's incredible. I gave up TV more than 15 years ago. I don't have a TV service at all because also I noticed that in the evening when I used to come home and turn on the TV and the news was always on some of at least one of the channels I wanted to know what's happening all around me, so I would usually listen to news, just waste time and get pissed off because, nothing you can do about what's happening on the other side of the world, whatever it may be. So there is really no requirement for you to be aware of what's happening in every single, small slice of time in every single square millimeter of the world. I don't have that compulsion. For example, Yasmin has a lot of these Twitter-based habits. He has a lot of compulsion to check the news, especially on the social media platforms like Twitter, X, whatever you want to call that. Okay, you can also work on enhancing sleep hygiene as well. Regular sleep intervals are very important. Sleeping overnight is normal stuff, but actually what I came to realize in the past couple of years, because of the fact that I was doing a lot of work from home since C19, what I came to realize is that having a half an hour of shut eye, for example, during the lunch break, you let's say eat a small lunch, then sleep for half an hour or so, and then wake up and then continue doing what you were doing, has an incredibly positive effect on my concentration and energy levels, overall mood and stuff like that. And I try to practice that as much as possible. And whenever I have some kind of an online course that I'm doing, usually we have 1 hour break for lunch pre-programmed into the schedule. That's the way in which it works. I usually try to, chillax at least for half an hour and not do anything, especially not browsing or something like that. Lately, I've been playing a little bit of Tetris-like games during those breaks, and this does actually have a positive effect on my concentration, but I also don't want to game too much because I'm a little bit of OCD issue when it comes to gaming, so I should pay close attention on the amount of time that I'm spending doing that. So refrain from screen usage for a minimum of 1 hour before going to sleep, for example, or half an hour. Blue light filters can be used. I don't use blue colors, for example, on the wallpapers on my computers, and I use dark mode on practically every application, both on the computer and my mobile devices as much as possible, because that has direct correlation with the amount of tiredness that I have. So I get tired, my eyes get tired much more quickly if I have a white background, just like on this specific presentation, versus a black one, if at all possible. And establishing some kind of a routine prior to going to sleep, something like pre-sleep regimen, do a couple of push-ups or stretch a little bit, or prolonged bath, or reading a book or a magazine, non-political magazine, by all means, computer magazine or whatever, might really help. This is what I oftentimes do, especially before going to sleep, and it really helps to kind of like get to sleep. While at the same time, I have a principle of going to sleep only when I'm really, really tired. I don't try to go to bed when I'm not. I find the quality of sleep directly correlates with the amount of energy that I have. If I still have a lot of energy and I want to do stuff, and I go to sleep, then my sleep quality is going to be low. And then some other things that we could do. We could work on actually not forcing and constantly use only online connectivity and messaging services and social networks and whatnot. Hang out with people. I find that to be liberating. Especially in the past couple of years, I've become really aware of the fact how different it is to hang out with people. Go to get some cup of coffee, or get lunch or whatnot. We have established actually practices in our small yet fruitful working environment with Yasmin and our colleagues to try to have as many lunches together as possible, to catch as much hangout time as possible, to go and get a cup of coffee, or cocoa or tea or whatever it is. And it really helps in terms of bonding with relationship between us, but it also helps with relaxing, because you do need to take regular breaks, whatever the type of activity is that you're doing. And also, in terms of hanging out with friends and families and whatnot, very similar principles can be used, and they can be very helpful. Also, something that I kind of neglected in the past couple of years: physical activities. They used to be my thing. I used to train a lot of sports when I was younger. Kind of like left that, but I should go back to it, even if it's just lifting weights or running or walking around or playing tennis, whatever it is, billiard, pool table, whatever. That might really, really have a heavy influence, positive influence on your well-being. Basically, to do some kind of a physical activity that you might enjoy sport-wise is something that's going to bring a lot of joy, and at the end of the day, you feel good. It's like a dopamine rush if you do some good practice or workout or whatever. So fitness activities will also at the same time help you to kind of like get rid of incessant screen usage. And one other thing that I found to be very helpful is that I could, and I'm usually like that. I'm structured and organized for the most part, so I like to have some kind of a plan for stuff that I do, at least in my head, not necessarily on a piece of paper. I'd like to formulate some kind of a strategy or a plan to do some stuff. I use my digital calendar a lot for that, and sometimes I put entries. For example, I have rehearsal entry for when I do music with my guys. When I go to studio to record some music, I also put that in the calendar, because I open the calendar application many times during the day to check what's next, because I just don't want to remember all of the stuff that I have to do. But it also has a positive side effect of me realizing there's something related to some hobby or some other activity, non-work related, that's in my schedule, which makes me feel really good as well, because I can look forward to that. Again, increasing the amount of positive, let's say, emotion that I get out of using a digital platform like a Outlook calendar or whatever it may be. So having that in mind, we also have to kind of like agree on the fact that each individual's interaction with technology is different. It's distinct, and it's always going to be some kind of a tailored strategy. So it's going to be unique for you, not anybody else. You might have some things in common, but you might be completely different, and that's completely okay. We are unique in many different ways. So evaluating existing digital behaviors usually is the first step to kind of like understand where you are with that, and then I find it I found that something really works for me, which is to establish some kind of a goal, attainable goal, objective for various types of activities that I do, including digital well-being. So sometimes I say I'm not going to pick up my phone for the next 2 hours, and no problem. And actually, I'm even more successful nowadays with any kind of tablet. I have multiple tablets at home, and right now I'm, for example, trying to work on the fact that I'm not going to carry the tablet with me when I go to sleep, because that usually leads me down to looking at some videos or some conferences or lectures and whatnot, which I find to be really stimulating. But I don't want to do that before I go to sleep, because at times, happily, luckily for me, not often, if I do something that's so brain stimulating and engaging, I end up thinking about it in my sleep, which again kind of like diminishes the quality of sleep that I get, which is very important because I'm a, let's say, a deep sleeper, but I sleep for much shorter period of time than average people. So my usual sleep cycle is something like 5 hours, maybe six. Everything more than that, or anything more than that, and I get really tired and I get headaches and whatnot. But this is also something that I'm probably going to have to work on a little bit. Some of the side effects might be fragmented attention span and reduced deep work state, in which you can do the work that you need to do with concentration and that requires concentration, and probably something that you're responsible for that might have side effects or consequences if you don't do it properly. So constant exposure to digital devices is going to weaken our ability to focus deeply on tasks, while constantly switching between apps, notifications, and interactions. It is going to be difficult to engage in deep work, sustained, focused efforts that require endurance on the cognitive side. And there are studies that kind of show that after an interruption like that, it can take up to 20 plus minutes to regain full focus. So what we want to do is schedule deep sleep workstations by blocking time for uninterrupted work, no answering to any calls or messages or whatever. We can use website blockers to minimize distractions so that pop-up windows from whatever don't explode. And single tasking is also something that actually offers quite a bit of relaxation power instead of multitasking to enhance focus and quality of work. I've noticed that quite a few of my colleagues actually have grown more and more single tasking with time. And it's not necessarily a sign of cognitive decline. It might be their planned way to fight that and or to concentrate better on stuff at hand, especially if they're responsible for something. The side effect is also increased cognitive load and decision fatigue. So constant exposure to those things can be actually worked on as well by limiting decision-making points with automating routine choices like where to eat, what to wear, and stuff like that. And you can also batch process digital interactions. For example, try to kind of like get yourself to a state in which you check emails twice or 3 times a day instead of constantly. One very nasty side effect of overuse of applications and social media and mobile platforms is related to time management, in terms of poor time management and overworking as well. In order for us to be able to fight that, there are a couple of things we can do. We can try to set strict working hours and communicate that with others. We can use the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule, and focus, for example, on the 20% of the critical tasks that will get us 80% of the results. And we can also implement time tracking tools to measure and optimize our digital consumption. Again, as a side effect, sleep disruption and lower mental clarity, loss of clarity of thinking and problem-solving ability are serious stuff. And this needs to be taken care of. So we can schedule screen-free reflection time, walking, journaling, reading, whatever, which actually I've noticed has quite a significant impact on creativity. And it's one of the reasons why I've been lucky enough to be, let's say, creative enough in a sense to do such an enormous amount of stuff and journal papers for my PhD and PhD in the past year. Do a lot of offline related activities, so work on some puzzles and brainstorming on paper, think about non-related stuff to work, think about other people, what you might do to help them. Stuff like that really helps. and stay away from AI generated solutions and general practices of the social media and whatever they tell you to do. Try to find your own way. And in general, what you can do is optimize your digital engagement for better performance in a couple of ways. 2 minute rule, 20 rule, intentional screen use and screen not use, and implementing technology fasting. So there are quite a few things are within the realms of your reach without any huge sacrifices or colossal changes in your life. You can implement them rather easily. For example, the 2 minute rule. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, try to force yourself to complete that immediately. This is something that a lot of people around me don't do well. I try to do this very well, but it has a detriment on the tasks that require a longer period of time. 20 after 20 minutes, take 20-second break and look at something 20 feet away to reduce eye strain. I find this and let's say some derivatives of this procedure to work really well. You can also program intentional screen use to define a purpose before opening the device instead of just randomly browsing. And of course, technology fasting, as mentioned previously, is a good idea. Okay, a conclusion of which is super simple. I mean, yes, technology is very important, a part of our modern life, but without using technology in a conscious manner, so conscious management, it can lead to digital overwhelm and tiredness and fatigue. By setting clear boundaries and prioritizing mindful usage, leveraging digital well-being tools, and trying to maintain some kind of a balanced approach, whatever it may be for you, people can cultivate a healthier relationship with technology. And managing the digital well being is not necessarily about abandoning and throwing away technology, but about using it responsibly in a way that adds and enhances our life, adds to and enhances our life instead of detracting from. And yes, finding equilibrium in a 24/7 connected world will require practice and discipline and self awareness and intentionality and whatnot. But definitely the rewards in improved efficiency, better concentration, greater sense of control, better relationships with people around us, more social awareness and whatnot are something that I find to be well worth the effort. Okay, that's the end of this episode. It's a bit shorter than usual, but I wanted to get this off my chest. So yeah, this was another episode of That IT Show podcast. I will see you next week. Bye bye.